Welcome back everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am making a video today on a machine that is not rare in the United States, but it is considered one of the strongest domestic sewing machines ever made. Now, one of my prior videos, I mentioned when I was highlighting the Singer 201, and I asked the question sort of pejoratively, is this the finest sewing machine ever made? And I believe you can make a lot of cases for that with the 201. But I would like to do the same thing for the Singer 15 class. And but in this case, I'm going to ask, is this the strongest home sewing machine ever made? And I actually believe it is, and I'll try to explain why. The 15 class goes way back. Singer made a machine that had a rotary hook called the 115, but they were building the 15 class machine as early as, I want to say, the early 1900s. I haven't checked serial numbers in Singer history. I'll have to go back and do that. If any of you know the exact date, let me know. But they were in production a very long time. Now, if you ever want to, if you're not sure whether you have a 15 class, some people look at Singer machines from this era and they just say, oh, it's a black Singer sewing machine, straight stitcher, yes. But one of the easy ways to tell whether you have a 15 class or not is that the tension dials are on the side. Now, some of you, or many of you, will have vintage machines that look like this, but they're not Singers. And that is because the 15 class of sewing machine that Singer created is the most copied design in history. There was even a German Pfaff model that was made in this same arrangement. And just as a reminder, when companies create things, they file for patents when they make a new design, and so no one can copy them. But Singer kept machines in production for decades, many decades at a time, sometimes for more than half a century. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. And of course, patents expire, and when they do, companies can, if they want, they can copy, and sometimes they'll make a few changes so it's not, complete copy. But in terms of the engineering and the way this machine was designed, the Singer 15 is the most copied machine. And you know what they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I think that's certainly true. This machine, in contrast to the Singer 201, which was often called the dressmaker's machine, the 15 was called the farmer's machine. And it is, to this day, considered one of the toughest, I believe it is the toughest home sewing machine ever made. It is not an industrial, okay? Now, this version, there were many versions of the 15. When the 15 was invented, they weren't using electricity at the time. The first 15s were put into treadle tables, and I have a treadle 15 coming up. I'll be doing a video soon, and the basic layout never really changed on the 15 class. Now, eventually, over the years, Singer would make a few changes. You'll notice, for example, this has direct feed reverse, so you can actually back tack. The first 15s in the treadle era did not have that feature. And let's see. This is the 15-91. Singer would make a number of versions of these. Now, there were different ones. You can look them up online. They have many different numbers to them. But this model is the 1591. And the reason we know that is because you are looking at its potted motor. Now, the potted motor is, that's what we call it today. Singer didn't call it that. But the potted motor is actually a direct drive motor. And what that means is it has a worm gear. It's about as big around as my finger. And it has a gear. The worm gear comes in contact with a gear on the hand wheel. And what that means is this machine does not use a belt. And the amperage on the motor is exactly the same as the amperage or very similar to the amperage on the other 15 classes, those that were made, sold in Great Britain, most of those sold in Canada and other parts of the world. They had a Singer motor mounted on the back with a belt, which is the way you see most vintage sewing machines from this time. But the Singer 15, this is the 15-91. This was sold in the United States with a direct drive motor. And the Singer 201, those two models had direct drive motors. And of course, the Singer 301, 400 series, 500, all of the Slant-O-Matics had a different motor design, but it was also direct drive. Now, people have often debated whether direct drive is stronger than belt drive machines. Well, a lot of people don't think that there's any difference because the motors have the same amperage. But I can tell you, I've had a client before who, I had both. I had both for sale and was willing to offer either of them to this sewer. And she wanted to make tote bags, and she was using heavy webbing and leather, not thick leather, but she was using leather on these bags. And we tried every machine I had, including the Singer with the Singer 15 that had the rear-mounted belted motor, and none of them could go through it. But the direct drive Singer 15 did. It was the only machine that I had and have ever had in a domestic class that could sew through not just leather. A lot of vintage machines can sew garment leather, but it could sew through really dense webbing and leather on top of that. And it was this machine. Now, these machines are not rare. There were many of them made and sold. But this particular one I picked up, and I really love it. The paint is in gorgeous shape. And it actually comes in a beautiful wooden bentwood case, the cover which doesn't fit into my space here for the camera, but it will come with that gorgeous bentwood cover. Any of you who see it on Kijiji will see images of it. And it actually has a knee lever. It uses, of course, it has a speed controller in here, and it has a little knee lever, not unlike the Swiss Berninas. Many of the Berninas use that. And anyway, this machine is, I believe, the strongest domestic sewing machine ever built. It is certainly the strongest one I have ever come across in terms of its sheer piercing power. And again, anything that you can get under the foot, if it will fit, there's a really good chance it will be able to sew it. And of course, there are limits to everything. There's no such thing as a machine that will sew anything. That's not true. What I've done is I've got a little piece of garment leather here, and I wanted to show you all the stitch quality. And then I'll sew through, this is a old pair of Levi's with a leather tag. It says Levi Strauss. And this is pretty dense stuff. And we'll test the machine out and see how she sews on it. This is a pretty strong test of this machine. And I have it threaded up. It takes class 15 bobbins. That's where that bobbin got its name from. It was from this machine. Let's see. I've already got this in here, and I'm going to turn this around. By the way, I currently have in this machine a size 18 leather-tipped needle. I have a lot of people ask if I have machines that can sew leather. Many of them will. This one is probably the strongest of all of them within the domestic category of machines. But if you're going to sew leather, having a leather-tipped needle really makes the machine's job a little easier, and you're less likely to have issues. So let's see. I'll go ahead and get it to start sewing here. Of course, I can back tack. Many of you who sew leather may prefer to, a lot of you may prefer doing your reverse locking in your stitch manually. So this is garment leather. You can see the stitches she makes, nice and even, fairly long for a vintage machine. And there's like a beige. You can see the thread on the back side is a beige color and the white on the top. I try to do this so you can see the two, and you can see that the stitch is beautifully balanced. And again, could I have sewn this with a regular needle? Yes. Many of you have. But again, if you really want your project to look great, use the leather tip needles. They're easy to find. Most sewing stores have them. They're not expensive. Now, I have got I've got heavy denim here. And what else have I got here? Multiple layers of denim, and then I've got this leather patch. So I think what I'll do is I'll just sew a straight line right down from one end to the other. We'll see how she does. Let's see if I want to come on this side or this side. I think I'll do this side. Make sure my needle is up. Okay, and I'm just going to start sewing now. Make sure when you're sewing things like this that it would help if I put the camera where you could actually see things. Let's do that. There we go. You always want to make sure your materials are going to feed under the foot, particularly when you've got multiple levels like this. Whoops. Oh, good. I wanted to make sure everything cleared. Now I'm going to turn around and do this again. When I started to come across with the leather, I moved slow intentionally. The machine wasn't bogging down. I did that because I wanted to test it. The machine is generally stronger than any of the needles you might use. And you really want to be sure that whatever material you're sewing on, that your needle can handle it, because you don't want to pop a needle. I didn't. And then around in the middle, I just kind of gave it a little bit more juice there, and it picked right up. So this time, I also want to make sure I don't sew so fast I don't get things under the foot. But let's try this here. I'll pull this up closer so you guys can see. I made 2 rows across, and you can see it sewed over multiple layers of this heavy denim and even over the little belt loop there, and then it went over this leather. And this is a fairly thick patch. Try to hold it up close so you guys can see the thickness. And that's pretty interesting in terms of, and you'll notice when it goes from the denim to the leather and then back to the denim again, it doesn't lose tension. That's a really impressive feat for any sewing machine. And on the back, you'll see the beige stitches are a little harder to see because of the coloring on the denim is splotchy. You know how denim gets. Now let's take a look at. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to take the jeans and I'm going to fold them like this. So now I'm going to come across this. Which way do I want to start this? Let's see. I need to give myself some room here. Okay, I'm going to start this, and I'll be sewing through the leather, the denim, and then basically the pocket, another couple of layers of denim. And I'm doing this on purpose. I'm not going to hurt the machine, but I want to sort of show what it can do. I will be sewing more slowly, and I always recommend that you do the same because, again, we're asking this needle to do quite a lot. It's a very high quality Oregon brand needle, but still. So let's see what it will let me do. By the way, you can see here on the back, I've got multiple layers with that pocket. Let's see. Start with my needle down. Be extra sure that my leather is going through there. Now there might be belted machines, home belted machines that could do this, but there are very few. And this machine went right over it and it's pretty phenomenal. Look here where I started here with the denim. I had a couple of layers of heavy denim. Then notice how the stitch, it comes right over to yet another layer of denim and the leather patch, comes straight across, and then goes back to sewing the leather, and it doesn't lose tension. That's really, that's one of the hallmarks of a really solidly engineered sewing machine. And this machine, because it has a potted motor or direct drive motor, it takes more time, not unlike the 201s. So normally, if I'm overhauling a Singer 15 class that has a traditional rear-mounted motor and belt, it doesn't take, it takes me a number of hours, but I always have to add a good number of, 5 or 6 hours at least, sometimes more, to restore the potted motor because they require going through, they have to have their grease wicks and grease, I call them the little grease tanks. So there's a lot more that goes into those, but I think they're worth it. And it's this type of sewing right here is the reason why. So any of you, by the way, if you're interested in this machine and you prefer a table, it can be installed into a Singer table. But many of, I shouldn't say many, half of my clients either really want a table or they prefer a case. So if you're one of those folks that wants a really strong machine that can sew, well, basically all sorts of materials, let me know, because this one comes in a case and you can put it right up on a dining table or anywhere, a workbench, and you can get to work working on your projects. This was called the farmer's machine for a reason. You can imagine people out on the prairie and they may have gotten this and drove into a city to get it or ordered it through the mail. And, it had to really work. People had a lot of different needs. Anyway, you have stitch length adjustment right here. You have light on the back. If you are interested in this machine, please reach out to me through the listing in Kijiji. I will put in photographs of the various things I did to recondition the machine, and you'll see also a list, itemized list of what was done to the machine to warrant, paying for it. And that's something that's important when anyone works on your machine. You want to know what did they do to it? And what are you getting for your money? So thank you for watching, everyone. Haven't had one of these in a while, certainly not one with a potted motor. But again, many of you who have machines that have belts and rear-mounted motors, you may not need the direct drive. All of these vintage machines are really tough. I don't, sew with a direct drive machine. I don't need one. But I have people who do, and they really want the strongest thing they can get in a domestic machine. If this machine will not sew something for you, you are probably ready to move to an industrial. And there's pros and cons to that. So anyway, I appreciate you all sticking with the channel. And if you have any comments on the Singer 15-91, let me know. I will be making a video in the near future on another 15 class. It's a 15-88, and it is a treadle-based Singer 15. So anyway, stay tuned, and there will be more videos coming in the next few weeks. Thank you.